the Portland Committee on Community Engagement, Community Engaged Policing, Community Engagement Subcommittee. Next slide. And let's get started with introductions. Any PCCEP members want to kick us off?
I can start. My name is Tia Palafox, and been a PCCEP member since 2017. I'm currently a co-chair of the Community Engagement Subcommittee. My pronouns are she, her, and thank you so much for coming tonight. And I see Ashley's on. She's my co-chair. Ashley, are you ready to go next?
Yeah, thanks, Tia. Yep, Ashley Schofield. I also use she, her pronouns. And like Tia mentioned, I'm one of the co-chairs for this Community Engaged Subcommittee. Thank you all for being here tonight. Let's see. Pastor Weisner, you want to introduce yourself? Are we doing that? I'm going around PCCEP members.
Oh, great. I'm glad to be here tonight. Thank you, Community Engagement, for doing the great work that you do here with PCCEP. This is a great team who has done tremendous work, and I'm happy to be here. My name is Pastor Robin Weisner. I am the co-chair of the full committee, as well as the chair of the settlement and policy. I'll pass it over to Byron.
Thank you, Pastor Weisner. Byron Vaughn, Policy and Settlement Agreement member and PCCEP member since 2020. I don't know who's next.
I think, yeah, Leslie. Oh, I'm echoing. Leslie, are you connected to audio yet? If not, that's okay. Okay, we'll hear from Leslie later, I'm sure. At this time, let's have our invited guests from this evening introduce themselves. I'll pass it to Fern, and we'll hear more from you later. So we'll just get your name and organization for the time being.
Sure, great. Good evening. My name is Fern Wilgus, and my pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Vice President of Brain Injury Connections Northwest. I'm very happy to be here, by the way.
Thanks, Fern.
Stephanie?
Hello, my name is Stephanie Grace, and I am a board member of Brain Injury Connections Northwest as well. And I'm a recent graduate of Lewis and Clark Law School and a soon-to-be staff attorney pending bar results of the Criminal Justice Reform Clinic at Lewis and Clark Law School.
Wow, congrats. Thanks for being here. All right, and now we'll hear introductions from any city staff, PPB attendees, DOJ, anyone else. I'll start. I'm Dory Grubinski, PCCEP project manager, and anyone else go ahead and jump in.
Hi, this is This is Avi Klepper. I'm PCCEP staff.
Hi, Avi. This is Teresa, and I am one of the facilitators, the only facilitator today, actually. Good to be here.
Hi, folks. Stephanie Howard here from the mayor's office. Good to see you all.
Hi there. It's Mary Claire Buckley from the Portland Police Bureau. Nice to join you this evening.
Celeste is here as well.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Celeste Carey, co-chair of PCCEP. Welcome, everyone.
All right, I think next up we have community agreements. Celeste, would you read those for us?
Certainly. Listen actively and respectfully. Share airtime. Be present and open to new information and perspectives. Assume positive intent. Respect each other and respect the group. Speak your own truth. Communicate directly, honestly, and respectfully. Ask questions to clarify. ask questions to clarify, just in case you didn't hear it. We do mean that. Call out bias and be okay with ambiguity.
Thank you, Celeste. And Ashley, would you present this slide?
Sure thing. So this is just an overview of our agenda tonight. As you know, we'll have a couple minutes of updates and then we'll move into our community spotlight. As you know, sort of a new standing agenda item that you will always see at the community engagement subcommittee meetings. So if you know community organization out there that would like to come showcase or come present or just would like some time on in our forum, please know that's always going to be there. And as you know, we'll have Brain Injury Connections Northwest today. So excited for that combo. And then we're going to move into some work plan discussion around just kind of what can this subcommittee and what can community engagement sort of look like for PCCEP in the next year. So this is definitely a work session, and I'm excited to have the public here and have some city folks here to weigh in on any ideas that we talk about. And then we'll take a break as usual, and then we'll come back and sort of continue that conversation and hopefully walk away with a little bit of a work plan. And then of course we'll have open public comment for anything that's on the agenda or anything else that's on folks' mind. Thanks.
And Dory, if I can interject here, I just wanted to mention before I forget that we do have ASL and Spanish interpreters. So if anybody needs that support, we do have them here. And just didn't want to forget that. Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa. Okay, real quick, our only update today, unless anybody else has something to add, but the main update is the same one. We are appointing new members to fill our vacancies, and that is happening on September 27th at the City Council meeting. That's a Wednesday. Yeah, that's all we have. Do any other PCCEP members have updates they wanted to share? Okay, great. So I think Tia, are you introducing this section?
Yes.
Great.
Hello. I wanted to start by explaining a little bit about the spotlight. At the beginning of each community engagement subcommittee meeting, we will spotlight an organization to engage and connect with, and for the community to learn more about each agency. We'll allow about 15 minutes at the beginning of each of our subcommittee meetings to do this. We are reaching out and requesting presenters from our outreach list, or you can contact me or Ashley to get scheduled. You can email us at tia.palafox@portlandoregon.gov or ashley.schofield@portlandoregon.gov or at pcepinfo@portlandoregon.gov. Tonight we are going to be spotlighting Fern Wilgus, the Vice President of Brain Injury Connections Northwest. Fern, would you like to get started? I know you have a guest, Stephanie, to help you tonight. Thank you for coming.
You're muted, Fern.
Fern, can you unmute?
Sure helps, doesn't it? Thank you very much. And thanks for the invitation, y'all. I'm the Vice President of Brain Injury Connections Northwest. We've been in existence in the Portland metro area for just about 10 years now. And can we get the slides up, please?
Emily, did you want to share those, or I can? Okay, let me go ahead and pull those up. Just a second here.
Okay, if you go down to the next one, please. Brain Injury Connections is kind of a third slot in somebody's transition through medical care. People receive a brain injury, they go to the hospital ordinarily, and if it's bad enough, they'll stay in the hospital for a spell. They'll go into a rehab type of clinic, whether it be the VA or some other clinic. And under all of this, they're being taken care of. And eventually, being a brain injury survivor myself, you're really kind of getting kind of anxious to go home. And what happens is, though, is once you're at home, all those safety nets are taken away from you. So our organization strives to be that safety net to catch folks that potentially would fall through the cracks. And so that's kind of a very short view of what we do. Next slide, please. Just in case, I'm just going to kind of go through this real rapidly. Traumatic brain injury and concussions. There's about 1 million adults a year. These are just kind of, these are Kentucky windage. If anybody sees my finger going up, these are kind of Kentucky windage numbers. So about 1 million folks suffer traumatic brain injuries each year. And concussion is a traumatic brain injury through crashes, whether it's sports or vehicles, substance abuse, both legal and illegal, prisons, incarcerations. Perhaps Stephanie will be addressing a little of this. Homeless. A lot of times people are going into the homeless situation because of their brain injury, or they're coming out because of what happens within that community. Domestic, gang violence, and then military, whether it's conflict or not. And the areas that really have a tough time with their community members that are out in the rural areas, low income, race, ethnicities, have there's different standards. So next slide, please. Unfortunately, there's different standards. The real life consequences is the fact that everybody is susceptible, whether you're a kid, whether you're an adult, susceptible to a brain injury. And once that brain injury happens, your whole life changes in an instant, in an absolute instant. Divorce rates go sky high. Families, friends, relationships are altered or lost entirely. Because the matter of fact, if you're listening to me, if you look at me, watch me walk and talk and that sort of thing, I look just fine. So family members have it's very difficult to have a sympathy for a headache or I can't remember. One of the things that I really don't like hearing is somebody saying, Fern, don't you remember? Well, no, I don't remember. And it's not because of my age, it's because of my brain injury. Loss of income, loss of jobs, loss of income is just shattered, especially if you happen to be in a professional role or any kind of a technical role. And once the family breaks up, once the jobs aren't there, once all that happens, well, then of course, that's then when the homelessness starts setting in. Next slide. Our mission, as I just stated, is to connect those touched by brain injury to people, resources, and services that best serve their needs. And our vision is to improve the quality of life of those affected by brain injury. And one of those quality of lives, oftentimes brain injury survivors go into isolation because the world is torn apart. And so through the services and the programs that we have, we help either keep people out of isolation or get them out of isolation. Next. Brain injury is often called the silent epidemic because until you really know of somebody about having a brain injury, you really don't know what it is, what it's like. There's so many people that don't realize that strokes are a form of brain injury. So one of the things that we do is that we go through the word educate. I prefer to use, we kind of introduce and explain whether it's in the public and businesses, educational institutions, government bodies and such, really about brain injury and the effects that it has directly or indirectly. We also work hard to make sure that there are some deliverables in some prevention, and we consider one of our prevention methods is that of speaking about brain injury and making people aware of it. Bring the survivors, the family, the co-workers, and whatever together in our various groups and activities. And like I said, we kind of like the idea of catching folks so that they don't fall through the cracks and keeping people out of isolation. Next. Who do we serve? Brain injury survivors of any kind of brain injuries, acquired brain injuries or traumatic brain injuries, their families, friends, caregivers, and those who work with or who need to know about brain injury. So we, like I said, the agencies that I described, but like lawyers, like business people, what can I do to help get this person back into a work environment? Next. We work really hard to allow for the members of the brain injury community the opportunity to support and interact with folks that walk in their shoes. We, like I said, we find ourselves being a safety net, and the safest way to do that is to hear, learn, and be around peers, at least initially. And then as your peers, then oftentimes then people become advocates and supporters. And then one of the things that's just really important is treating everyone with respect and to solicit strengths within ourselves. Next. As mentioned a moment ago about traumatic brain injury, there's also what's called acquired brain injury. This is an event such as a stroke, as I was talking about. The TBI, the traumatic brain injury, is usually a hit to the head or a penetration of an object. And concussions are a form of traumatic brain injury. Next, please. So these are kind of some of the things that we get involved with. We belong to a couple of nonprofit large organizations within the areas, and supporting nonprofit networking groups. And so we're out in community events, we attend vendor fairs, do a heck of a lot of networking, and just to make sure that organizations and or people are not just reinventing the wheel when there's something applicable already out there. And as with any other nonprofit organization, we tend to really need some funds to keep our operation going. So that's another big piece of our operation. Next. And this is my contact information. Should you want it, I've included here my personal cell phone And our business, at our business, we have a Google voicemail, and either myself or someone else answers the phone, and my personal email and then the business email. I'd just absolutely love to turn this over now to Stephanie, because we have been doing some, we don't train people. We enlighten, I figure that it's very difficult to learn something that you know absolutely nothing about. So what we do is go in and make people aware about brain injury. And so we've been doing that quite a bit in Clackamas County, as well as with the Oregon City Police Department, law enforcement. So Stephanie, would you step in, please?
Yeah, happy to. Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Grace, and I'm a board member with Brain Injury Connections Northwest. And I got involved because I am also a brain injury survivor. In fact, my brain injury was rather serious. I was in a car accident where I don't recall the details, but I was told that at the scene of the accident, I was wandering around in circles. I could only make a left turn and speak gibberish. So I have come a long way from where I was. And criminal justice became an interest of mine. And I attended law school as a brain injury survivor, which was also very interesting. I graduated in May from Lewis and Clark. I just took the bar in July. Cross your fingers and toes. I will get bar results very soon. So I've been hired by the Criminal Justice Reform Clinic at Lewis and Clark under the direction of Elisa Kaplan. So I have spent the last 3 years while in my law school journey having a lot of interaction with people doing post-conviction work. So one of the things that I do is study, and that has been one of my focuses in law school, is the interaction between the brain injury community and law enforcement, particularly looking at post-conviction. So I will try not to bore you with statistics, but I'm here to connect some dots for you as to why we're here and maybe what we can help bring and enlighten in light of the work that you do. We often, when we do presentations for law enforcement, have to challenge some assumptions, because when we know better, we do better. I don't believe that law enforcement as a whole, even though I'm part of the Criminal Justice Reform Clinic, I think there's an assumption that we also think law enforcement is bad, and we don't. I think that there are systems in place, and I think we can, all kinds of systems. I think we're all working towards the greater good, and we're all finding better ways in which we can do that. And so that also involves understanding the human condition and how that comes to play when we're talking about brain injury and how that intersects with the criminal system. Research has established that people with brain injuries do have a higher risk of committing criminal offenses. And my experience with clients, as I've worked through this, there is a belief amongst some in the criminal system that if someone brings up having a brain injury, that they're told that they're making excuses, as opposed to providing context maybe for their behaviors or for what's happening. And by the way, any of the information that I'm citing here, I have tons and tons of research for. It just seems odd to give you all my footnotes. So I will put my contact information in the chat if you want to know all of my research. But the CDC has reported that, according to most jail and prison studies, that 25 to 87, and that is a wide range. I realize that, but that is kind of the nature of the studies that are being done and whether they are narrow or wider in scope. But depending, and I'll explain the difference in that in just a second, but 25 to 87% of inmates, so people who are incarcerated across the country, have experienced a head injury or brain injury, as compared with 8% of the general population. And I will say that that higher percentage tends to track more with females or people who identify as females who are incarcerated. And that tends to be more common amongst people who experience domestic violence. And that isn't to say that people who identify as male don't experience domestic violence, but statistically, we know that people who are female or who identify as female, that percentage is higher. And we notice that happening amongst people who are housed, for example, in Oregon at Coffee Creek and also throughout the country. So we have to acknowledge that a lot of behaviors from people with brain injuries masquerade as what we would call, from a law enforcement or criminal justice system definition, of bad behavior or bad character. So sometimes that is like impulsiveness, aggression, lack of inhibition, poor judgment, or lack of insight, things like that, that sometimes and oftentimes, depending on the person, has to do with the injury that has been caused to the brain. I jokingly say, but I mean this in some respects, that most people don't wake up in the morning and go, "Today I am going to crime." Most people, there is an origin and a story to what is going on. And I think it behooves all of us as a society, and definitely as a Portland community, to start understanding that a little bit better, because I think it will benefit us as a community, particularly within Portland law enforcement and the criminal justice system, or the criminal system as a whole, to understand that there's generally an explanation or a genesis for a lot of the behaviors. And that isn't to excuse it, but to provide a context, because we can't address it if we don't understand it. Right now in Oregon, we know that 80 to 90% of the people who are female or who identify as female have reported that they are victims of domestic violence with some element that would indicate that they have sustained some sort of brain injury. The statistics from males or people who identify as male is a little bit more murky on the domestic violence reporting. And I think that while cultural norms are shifting in that, and we're hoping to get more research, that is still, it is a growing field, and we're hoping to get more information on that. But one population that we are getting more information on, and this is another population that is near and dear to my heart and where I've devoted a lot of research to, is veterans. 8.5% of the incarcerated population in Oregon they're veterans. And the United States Department of Defense reports that between 2000 and 2015, well over 300,000 of our troops were diagnosed with traumatic brain injuries, and they know that that was very underreported. So I completed a very large research project. It's sort of the law school equivalent to a thesis about brain injuries amongst veterans and their intersection with the criminal system in Oregon. And I'm happy to share that research as well. And how our veteran treatment courts in Oregon are somewhat inconsistent in how we address that. But I think it's worth noting that as we look at and are trying to address how we police and how we address and how we keep our communities safe and how we're addressing those things, to keep people safe, but also how we best police, we have to think about the populations that we serve and the best ways that we can address that we have a veteran population who's coming back. And I realize that, we have less troops overseas than we used to, but we still have quite a few people coming back with brain injuries and PTSD, and they're still not necessarily having their needs met. And I'm not going to get into the mental health crisis that's happening in Oregon. I'm sure everybody here is well aware of that, but that's another subset of that crisis. But I want to talk about some of the practicalities of what that.
Stephanie, my apologies for interrupting. So we do have a few more minutes for you. Some questions came up in the chat.
Oh,
And
okay.
so if you can wrap up perhaps in the next minute, and then maybe we can make
Will
space
do.
to answer this one question. That way we can get back on schedule. Thank you so much.
I will happy to. So let me just a few ways that we know that the brain injured community has had some difficulties interacting with law enforcement, and then I'm happy to address the questions. With the brain injured community, especially with like sensory overload and processing times, so flashing lights from the cars can cause disorientation when they're interacting with law enforcement, and that causes a lot of processing and sensory overload, and that can be interpreted by law enforcement to be non-compliance or things like that, when it simply is a matter of they're not able to understand what's happening. They can't hear things being told to them when their eyes are not tracking because their systems aren't interconnected. So that they're not able to, and that kind of like, it's a trickle down effect. They can't follow directions. Oftentimes they're not able to answer questions. Oftentimes because they have aphasia, they're not able to express things in the way that they need to, or they need a longer processing time, or they can't formulate a response in a quick enough way, or so that there is an assumption that they're either under the influence or they're being unwilling to comply when it tends to be something else. So we work on kind of recognizing those symptoms so that we can talk about that this isn't somebody who is trying to be willful in following an order, that this is somebody who has some sort of like functional organic issue going on. Is there any, okay, so now I'm happy to go into the, Celeste, I'm sorry, I see a hand, so that's like right in front of me. So I'll do that and then I'll go to the chat because I
We're
do
all
want
good. Yeah, we just wanted to kind of give everyone a sense of time, but we're good. No worries. So yeah,
Yeah, this is great stuff. I just want to say, let's just, let this conversation continue because this is really, we're really glad you're here. So thank you.
Yeah.
So thanks to you, Stephanie, and thanks to Fern. Fern and I have worked together a few times in both my crime prevention career and now. One of the things that I, along with Tia, brought brain injury advocates into PCCEP is because it would be really helpful for us to include some data on this or data points on this and how STOPS data is collected and how domestic violence calls are processed. Data points, and this is something I learned when I was doing the racial equity subcommittee, and then we presented in STOPS data. But data points are determined both by federal mandates, by state mandates, and then also for us by the Department of Justice mandates. However, those data captures, those data points can be modified. And in this case, we would like to have maybe input, well, not maybe, we would like to get input from the community so we can form some process to add brain injury data collection to the STOPS data process. So that's going to be something we move on in the future.
That would be,
yeah. And I just wanted to echo, it's really important that we do work with the police on this. I'm a brain injury survivor myself. I've had a number of concussions from sports and a couple of strokes. And so I know the difference, and sometimes other people do too. It's really important that we recognize, as Stephanie said, when we have stops, people may not look like they are, I don't want to say impaired, but impaired. And it's really important that our officers learn to ask the proper questions. They don't have to recognize symptoms all the time or affect changes, but they need to know how to ask the right questions. And so with that, I'll end it because there's much more that we can do as we work.
I think that's fantastic. And I think, a really easy change, particularly when it comes to a domestic violence call, is because I look at so many police reports, is domestic violence victim appeared crazy and it was hard to get a straight answer. Like I have read comments like that verbatim, and I thought, well,
that's a sign of possible brain injury. I used to be a nurse.
Right,
So
exactly.
I got it. And I care for people. I took care of people who had mental health and physical challenges. And that, we could change the language. We could even teach them a victim or person appeared incoherent.
Right.
Did not make sense. Maybe looked as though they were under the influence of something. Those are key things to look for, behaviors.
Right, right. I think we need to start like describing a behavior instead of naming something. And I think that that would be a very easy thing to do. And I think that would also lead to further exploration as opposed to giving it a label and being dismissive.
This is where our presentations kind of come into play as kind of a beginning phase. We have our presentations labeled "The Brain Injured Among Us," and we have a panel of people that are either work in the field, whether they're speech therapists or mental health folks. I like to have both of them when we can, as well as survivors to be able to tell their stories. Also, I made sure that we have a police officer. We have a fantastic retired police officer, and he helps in talking about de-escalation. There's de-escalation is a training factor within the department. However, how to go about helping then the survivors, the potential brain injury survivors. So I'm just adding on how I concur. I think that this would be something for you all to consider to pursue.
And I see the question in the chat. I just want to say sometimes people who are brain injured don't know that they're brain injured. So I don't know that the question, do you have a brain injury, would be good, but you could say, did you get hit in the head?
Yes.
Did you lose vision for a second? Do you remember from this time to this time? Things like that you will get at the brain injury without somebody having to articulate the diagnosis, because sometimes they don't even know.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I think Pastor Weisner also had a question in the chat about I think something about re-entering returning from do you want to ask your question, Pastor Weisner? I'm not totally sure.
Yes,
I would state it correctly.
Thank you for the attempt also, Dory. I was hearing about how those who are in prison, and I'm looking at those who are doing the reentry programs that are coming back. In that, I noticed and I have seen a lot of people being released without a full assessment of what actually has given them to come back to the community without diagnosing and further treatment. Because during that period of time, when there are things that are starting to come back, this seems to be abnormal, sort of say, in behavior, then it is looked at in my thinking of where that people will see it as an old habit or certain things that cause them to go back to a prison state of mind or an area where they return to certain behaviors when trauma has not been addressed upon the release. And I'm thinking that is if there is any reference or any of your studies that have seen an assessment of what that looks like for those who do come back, or is it that the parole probation is it overlooked? I'm not sure how you look at that in studies or data. And so that's pointing to the data information.
It has been woefully overlooked. It has been frustrating as all get out for me. In fact, I was sitting in on a parole hearing today and it was not addressed. I would love, and maybe reaching out to the Criminal Justice Reform Clinic would be great. I think there needs to be additional legislation to talk about mental health, like wraparound evaluations for people who are approaching release and also parole to address brain injury and things like that. I mean, this is a whole nother soapbox, but I think addressing, unique mental health needs, community concerned, cultural, like as it folds into cultural concerns, I think that is an underserved need. I mean, I just found out, I think a couple of months ago, that we don't even offer in the Oregon incarcerated system any treatment for somebody who has been convicted of a sex offense. Like they don't receive any of that treatment while they're incarcerated. It is upon them once they've been released to receive that treatment. So I think there are just a lot of different resources that we could be offering somebody while they're incarcerated for the betterment of the community, to have that while they're incarcerated, so that the community is better and safer for having that, and having more of a wraparound system when they release. And I certainly think something that is brain injury responsive and culturally responsive upon release is exceedingly necessary.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Fern. I was gonna
I apologize for butting in. One of the things, also, in addition to what Stephanie was saying, is that Oregon has not, with its veterans or its civilians, done a very good job in doing any kind of a brain injury scan, scanning, not a scanning, evaluation. And screening, that's the word I wanted. Brain injury screening, going into any kind of an incarceration or even a probation time, and most certainly is coming out. We're just now starting to pilot brain screening for veterans. And one of the reasons veterans get kicked out is because of behavioral. Well, they got dinged in the head, or they have PTSD or whatever. So there's just a whole lot of work that needs to be done.
I was thanking you, Vern, for that, and Stephanie for that reply. And the reason I asked that, and looking at that, and knowing that the work is huge, and we're looking at the efforts of there, but what legislation has, I'm not sure if that's been moved into an area of where it is in the criminal justice department to look at that as a work that this like studies and people who have been more informed than I am and what I'm learning. And I thank the community engagement for bringing this to the topic of discussion, for it is an awareness and also an enlightenment for an absence in my thinking, but seeing it so much as far as part of what we do to work together, as trying to be able to reduce the harm of either from people who are re-entering or being released, to have a productive whole wellness when they do come back in the
Yeah. Let's team up.
And this is just a tip.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Fern.
Oh gosh, I was gonna say, this is the reason that I invited Stephanie, because I knew where her passions are. I know where her knowledge is and her skills. And this is a community that we also need to take we need to care for.
Okay, so I'm here, and I realize I'm being recorded, but I'm also just going to out myself. I am also formerly incarcerated, so this is a passion project for me.
Yeah.
To care and love for our incarcerated community and the people who are being released. It's why I'm part of the Criminal Justice Reform Clinic. It's why I do post-conviction work. It is why I am on the parole team. It is why I'm on the Senate Bill 819 team. This is, and now being a brain injury survivor. So while I don't necessarily disclose that all the time, just because of the bile that I receive from people, I know that I'm being recorded, and I acknowledge the risks that come with that. I just want to say to this group, like, I am such an ally. Truly, I am such an ally that I put my contact information in this group. If there is anything I can do, I will do it, because I just so passionately believe in helping not just the brain injured community, but the intersection that is so clear amongst the brain injured community, the incarcerated community.
Yes.
I do want to say in my last comment that I don't want to lose focus of the highlight information that you bring, Stephanie, as well as Fern, about the data of women who are being the ones in this conversation, because we look at a lot of things about how as a whole we are, but if the data is reporting to those who are the caregivers of our homes and children, if they're not whole, if they're not made in that capacity of where that it makes them, even in the areas of like what you're, don't be afraid of, Stephanie, of your past and passion of what you're doing, because again, every person that takes the work on itself actually has a, what I call a destination of where others may never be there to help those who are in that type of situation. My last comment, I believe Tia asked, had I had a brain injury? Well,
No, Pastor Weisner,
No,
I'm
she's
gonna-
just declaring herself. That's all, Pastor.
oh,
I think that was a little confusing in the chat, but I am gonna suggest that we move on to some of our other members and attendees with questions at this time. So I'm gonna ask Ashley to go ahead. Thanks, Pastor.
Thank you again, and thank you for the comment time.
Yeah, thanks, Dory. And yeah, thank you so much, Stephanie and Fern. I just feel like you guys have really highlighted the intent of what we wanted this community corner to be, to just sort of be a space of enlightenment and learning for the community and connecting. And I really wanted to just note that I understood the spirit of your organization to create those kind of foundational inroads to better understanding each other, and just being, there's systems, but then and I know that's what we talk about mostly here, but just this like understanding that we're all coming from a space that we don't know anything about. And my exposure with, and Tia, I say this example because you've been so honest and open about your own brain injury and just working together, and that exposure to like my linear way of project management, right? And just like stepping back and being like, gosh, wow, like, how do we just sort of meet each other where we can? And so I really just wanted to thank you for your work that you do. We're very lucky to have you guys here today. And, maybe this might not be a question we can answer tonight, but I'd love to keep working on this idea of finding, maybe it is more of a question of just understanding what can be done for police to specifically do better to reduce harm for those with brain injury, and just sort of understanding, like, I know there's some talk of legislative components and some community work, but what within the system could actually be inroads to kind of bridging that understanding. And I think the data collection and having language and questions and the right questions for police to ask, but what can be done also to sort of start that inroad of having them be better at responding to different types of where people are coming from.
I just quickly want to respond to that, is that you don't know what you don't know, and that's why it's I believe that it's really best to kind of let the law enforcement folks know about brain injury, understanding the brain injured among us. And I'd be really happy to, it's been offered, is to putting you in touch with either both Oregon City behavioral folks that team up with their law enforcement, as well as Clackamas County. We've worked with them now for probably 2 years, maybe a little bit longer. And the reactions from the officers, whether they're new, sometimes some of the officers are coming through for a second time, said, if I didn't know about brain injury,
yes,
I wouldn't have known to turn the person around away from those flashing lights. or have turned off the first car's flashing lights. So what we do is we try to prepare. Before you can be trained, you gotta know what a bicycle is before you can get trained to even to ride it, the darn thing. Okay, and that's what this understanding the brain injury is. With not only Jim being a former police officer, but we also have Stephanie, who is great. Celeste is presented with us, which has been absolutely fantastic, and then with my own stories. So that I'm done.
And we have it in the works. You're dragging a little bit, but since we work with Oregon City, we're looking at how to connect with PPB, but one step at a time because we're trying not to be spread thin. Yeah, and consider this. If you all remember, one of the things I said is I want to broaden our approach to our current cache of mental health resources and people who are presenting to us, so we have a much broader view of what kind of mental health challenges and issues and needs there are in our community.
Yep.
Don't forget Stephanie Howard.
Yeah.
She's been waiting. Stephanie, go ahead. And then we have I want to double check to make sure that the questions by Dr. Elizabeth Allen were responded to. Anybody else who posed a question, go ahead, Stephanie.
Thanks, everybody. Honestly, I feel like all the things that have been said in the last couple of minutes, especially, are reading my mind. I think, again, I won't belabor it. This is amazing and helpful and important information. And it's so great to hear, how this intersects directly with the work that we're, here that PCCEP exists to talk about and to focus on. I want to just offer anything I can do to help facilitate when you're ready to get you connected with PPB training folks. I think this would be, really important if it isn't part of it, but happy to help in that in any way. And the only other thing I did want to just highlight, and Dr. Allen was alluding to this in her comments, is that I think, it's important to also recognize that we have, the significant population of veterans that are coming back and that are, that have traumatic brain injuries. And we have a large population of those veterans on the police force. And I feel like a lot of this training may, in addition to helping them interact positively with people, it may help them to recognize it in themselves, which I think, is a place of really great understanding that we'd love to be at. So thank you all so much. Really, really appreciate it. And I'll drop my email in the chat.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. So Dr. Elizabeth Allen had a question. Is there any info on how many police have brain injuries? And Dr. Allen, I just wanted to maybe have a clarifying. Is this a question for Oregon on a national level? Do you wanna pose your question?
Well, I would settle for any information. If any city knew about their police force, police forces could be radically different, LA from New York, from Chicago. But then again, why should I start off believing that? So any police force, if we know about brain injuries in a police force, if there were absolutely none, I personally would be surprised.
Yeah. Because so many are former military.
Well, not just that. I mean, the job itself lends to getting hit in the head, just plainly.
Dr. Allen, one of the things, and Stephanie, maybe but I have not seen any data. There is I would love to get you in touch with Dr. Rainey. She is associated with Center for Brain Injury Research and Training here. She's doing her PhD with Center for Brain Injury Research and Training. It's down in Eugene. It's an affiliate with Eugene, University of Oregon. And her husband is a former police officer until he was taken out of service because of being shot. But she is trying to do a lot of data collection on the law enforcement. And there is a study, I believe, that she is running right now. I'm writing myself some notes because otherwise I'll forget. And I would love to get you guys in touch if that's something you want to, if you want to trying to find somebody.
I'll put my phone number in the chat for you.
Thank you.
Fern.
One of the things is that Oregon, we have fallen behind. We were kind of the state of states for doing a lot of great work, you know, within the brain injury community, and it's kind of fallen behind. We're in a catch-up mode right now, and and I think we're moving fairly rapidly, but never too fast. I mean, it's never fast enough is what I really wanted to say. But we are starting to work with the veterans. David Crackey is the Oregon Brain Injury Advocate Coordinator. And right now he's working out of Siebert. I've told him that we're meeting tonight. He is a person that, as well as Siebert, the Center for Brain Injury Research and Training, they have a lot of resources. I've worked with them now for quite a few years, and I'm able to touch base with some other states that are way ahead of us on capturing, doing the training, doing assessments, and that sort of thing. So I have already quite a few notes.
Okay, all right, guys. I think we are gonna have to leave it there, unless we had any other loose ends to tie up. But thank you so much for this incredibly informative and rich discussion. I think there are going to be a lot of areas for PCCEP to kind of explore and pick up on here in their ongoing work, and there's some exciting avenues to go down, and I hope that I'm sure that we will be in touch with you all in that future work.
Celeste has our number. Literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Yes. If our co-chairs have any words to share before we head out for our break here, just give you that opportunity.
Yeah, just thank you again for being here. You really, definitely made this community corner a really good one. And this information, I think, just will really enlighten us in the work we move forward, and look forward to working with you soon too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, guys. Thank you so much. Really. We'll be in touch. Okay, everyone, we are gonna take a 5-minute break. And we'll be back here at 7:05. See you then.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
There we go. And we can get slides up. All right, so our next session, and thank you everyone for being flexible tonight. We had such a great conversation earlier. So we are gonna jump into this segment. The members of this subcommittee are gonna spend some time doing some longer term planning to kind of think about what community engagement events could look like you know, in the coming months and even the next year ahead. So next slide, and I will hand this over to our co-chairs, as well as our facilitator Teresa, who has quite a bit of community engagement experience and will be helping us with this section.
Yeah, definitely excited for that. Thanks, Dory. Yeah, so I was going to kick off the conversation here. You know, T and I were talking about some agenda items, and really this idea of a work plan has been just sort of something on our list for a while too. And I think we've talked about it in the public forum here of, you know, really thinking about kind of strategizing topics to bring to the public in this space. So one, that we can make sure that we're giving the public time for feedback on what, you know, what those conversations could look like. And then also, yeah, just maybe making more plans for, you know, what community orgs kind of we can place in our community connection corner, and just, yeah, you know, being more thoughtful, being more proactive about who we're bringing to the space, and yeah, also events. I mean, we've been talking about that for a while, and I think we're ready to sort of you know, we've got a good committee. I feel like we've got some good processes down. So yeah, I think we're at a space where, you know, we've got the extra hands and the staff. We've got great facilitator. So it just feels like a right time to finally push through and say, yeah, let's do some events. I know Tia has been talking about, you know, putting together a youth council event again, and kind of thinking through how we can really get out in the community and engage and meet people where they are and learn, and then, you know, help us build those connections and bridges so that we can really, as a committee, really speak up for the community and you know, bring ideas and inform our recommendations. And then, you know, I think also just being flexible, always trying to be flexible so that we can, you know, use the community engagement subcommittee space for, you know, things that are of high topic going on in the community, in the city, and just, you know, being flexible there. Like sometimes we might need to use a space to do a town hall or something that gets something out in the community faster. So I'll stop talking because I want, you know, I really wanted to go around to the PCCEP members, whether you're on the subcommittee or not. And you know, we as you know, as internally we've been sharing, we've created like a Word doc, which is some ideas. So I can pull some ideas from that. But wanted to open the floor to PCCEP members about what they've been thinking about, ways to get out in the community, whether it's events or organizations that we could be connecting to more, that maybe you already have connections with, that we could bring into this space. So yeah, Byron, I think your hand's already up, so I'll let you take over.
Thank you, Ashley. Good night. Good evening, everybody. I had a question. If we can mix the likes of Stephanie, let me see, Elizabeth, and mix the doctors of OHSU's Providence and the PPB, and have a seminar and throw back different ideas of things that, you know, that we think about, have we had in this conversation tonight. I believe I played football for 8 years, so I had, back then they used to call them getting your bell rung playing football, but now today they're called concussions. So I've had like 2 of those in my life, and then, you know, growing up with a father that was in Vietnam and then came home and didn't have the help for his mental state, and, you know, our relationship was really rough. I mean, like, abusive, you know, being young, and, you know, back then, you know, police weren't coming to your house if children was in those type of situations, and luckily that's hadn't gotten 1,000% better because they need to be protected at all times. Women as well. I mean, anybody really. I don't believe anybody should put hands on anybody. As I was saying though, I think that's something maybe at a age that can be recognized also, because I'm saying a lot right now, but I think that's also an age that can be started at 6, 7 years old if their mothers are in a relationship that's abusive and it's on the child, keeping track of the child, with support and guidance and, education and literature that they can read to keep their minds, focused on knowing that this is something that they can advocate for as a young kid. So I think a seminar would be really nice if we had the budget for something like that. Sound like at the Oregon Convention. I mean, to really want to dig deep into this. Thank you for giving me the time.
Yeah, well, thanks, Byron. No, thank you so much for sharing your story and letting us know more about yourself. And yeah, I think to just kind of confirm, you're thinking like a seminar, particularly around brain injury survivors and that conversation we were just having, or maybe like something even bigger than that.
Yeah, something even bigger than that because this is so important. Because this is, I believe, if it has not been agreed amongst everybody in the room that this is where it's all starts. This is the birth of all our problems is mental. If you have any type of, the brain is the most sensitive thing on your body outside of the heart, I would guess. And I'm just guessing. I'm just thinking. And so it's important to police can look at and talk to people differently because you wouldn't think they would talk to their auntie or their uncle or nephew that had any type of mental problems or any other type of situation. So why would they carry that into their work, into their everyday work as police officers? So and I'm missing a lot of things here that I want to speak. But yes, on a grand scale, in a sense, headed by this committee, hopefully, and really bring the minds together because this is a conversation that again hasn't been talked about as these ladies have spoken about, and there's also that it also connects with everybody, uh, uh, poor community, middle community, rich community. It doesn't matter. It's a very big deal, especially for people coming out of the prison system. Yeah, I don't know if this to be true. I heard in Canada that in their prisons kind of look like houses. So it's easy for them to transfer back when they get out of jail. They're not so shell shocked when they come out of jail. But the jails here, excuse me, here in prison, I mean, there's cement walls, they're cold, they're wet, they're sweaty, they're not kept up, they're dirty. So, it's a mind thing. That's my point of saying this is really big.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think it's like kind of a conversation about, I mean, there's so much complexity to the work we're trying to do here. And like, what can we at PCCEP, in our little space of influence start building some blocks to like maybe better system change. Cause yeah, I mean, the carceral system is pretty rotten right now and doesn't serve rehabilitation in any way and all that. And, but yeah, that perspective sharing, I don't know. I wrote down perspective sharing and like, can we create more forums for that? I mean, I think we just did this today a little bit, and how could, so how do we bring in PBB and like, yeah, Stephanie lending her influence too and that connection and, maybe building it that way first. And so, yeah, I'm putting on notes. Tia, how about you? Or yeah. Or are you? Yeah, I just make sure.
Robin had his hand up first if he wants to go, and then I can go next. I have so much to add to this as well.
Thank you. Great discussion again. Great question that you have for. If you don't mind putting your President's PowerPoint back up there, kind of looking at the questions that have been posed, and hopefully I'll be able to kind of hit it where I'm not straight at. But organization of partnership is what I've seen there, and then also looking at next year with the PCCEP agreement events. One, I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with the NAACP is now doing has a new board and group of people who are now forming their committees as well as community engagements. being a part of what their work is in the civil rights and also social justice as they do. So again, I am saying that I think the NAACP would be a great place with the new president that's involved yesterday, Posey, Terrence, Ashton Simpson, now Dr. Pastor Hennessy with policy and political engagement. Then also topics of what I was thinking on is, of course, with the current things that are happening in our community for engaging conversations, again, between homelessness as well as the gun violence areas are those two, what I would hope could, get a lot of input, especially with all of the things that everyone's working toward and resolving what's happening currently in our city. Those are my 2 comments and recommendations.
And Pastor Eidron, do you have connections to the NAACP? Like, do you have an inroad there to start having those conversations about maybe they can come to our community corner, or like you said, maybe it's tied to something, maybe a topic that we'll just sort of focus on.
Oh, well, Ashley, of course. And then I think we had a great introduction with Vadim on the last event that we had with settlement and policy. He is also a part of the NAACP. But most definitely, I do, and hopefully I can, or we can just go back to Vadim and kind of facilitate that area where we wouldn't have to recreate a whole new different avenue of trying to contact, because he really enjoyed the last meeting as well.
Yeah. Maybe we can go to their space.
That is something that I think that is very much so in partnership. Because this work does work hand in hand with the mission of the social justice of the NAACP and PCCEP with the settlement agreement. He was at our meeting, our full committee meeting, James Posey, at that one that we did downtown. So the partnership will probably going to be great to go and see how we can go to their places and host whatever partnership we can merge together with in some of the collaborative effort.
Great, yeah. That would be great. Let's maybe you can start that conversation about maybe going to them and seeing if that could work, and just maybe we can start there.
Okay. Should I pass that to you, Dory? And how should I?
We can get into the logistics later, but I thought like starting that, if you wanted to start that inroad conversation, and then.
Yeah, I mean, my sense is that Pastor Weisner not only has inroads, but has probably extremely close, decades-long relationships with a lot of these folks. So
I used to be the vice president.
Yeah. So I think well, I don't want to jump ahead here. But I think we have a pretty good sense of, I mean, and I guess I'm kind of I wrote these prompts, right, on this slide, so blame me. But I think, as far as what organizations we can partner with, I would say PCCEP has a pretty solid sense of this one, right? Like, this piece to me seems like the piece that fits in to the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like, I think like what Byron was saying, I thought was really interesting, as far as like coming up with that sort of event idea And then it's like, okay, who fits into that? Maybe it's Brain Injury Connections, maybe it's OHSU, maybe it's the NAACP, right? So thinking about like the order of like how this all works in terms of, you know, bringing things into reality. Yeah, because I think you all, like as a group, have some pretty incredible connections, is my sense.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I'm on mute, and that's the reason why I'm not on the video again, coming through this the virus that I have.
I can't tell if did you want to say something or were you wanting to be on mute?
No, I'm going to mute, so
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm exiting
that's okay.
this.
Let's move it over to Tia. Tia, I know you've done so much work in thinking about these kind of plans. I definitely want to give you the floor and talk as much as you want, because I think you have a lot of great ideas we could bounce off from you.
Okay, thank you. I do. I feel like I have too many ideas, everyone. So I do want to reach out to the mental health community, the youth community, the African American community, the houseless and sex workers community, and refugees and immigrants. But how I'm thinking is with the mental health community, I really would like to put together some sort of mental health fair where I or we invite all the agencies in our outreach list who are in the behavioral health section, which is at least 20, and put together a health fair week where we come together to talk about their clients and how law enforcement is impacting the behavioral health community. And really, I think when we merge mental health into community engagement and the racial equity committee that merged into the settlement agreement and community engagement, how we all merge our committees together, I really want to make sure we're reaching out to the mental health community, and thought that we could put together a big fair to just get us all in the same room to have a great discussion and just really engage with people in more of a fair type of situation. Maybe having it at a lobby or an event space where we come together and provide snacks and drinks and just really have a nice environment for the mental health community. And where we can meet with them together to hear their voices and make a plan with this group. So that was one thing that I just lost my, here it is. One thing I wanted to try to put together, and I feel like I could organize that with the mental health community. And I know I can talk too much, so I'll move through this as fast as I can. I also really want to reach out to the youth community, where we also have had lower numbers and with the youth involved with us, and thinking about how we can reach out to youth at the high schools, getting involved in their affinity groups or leadership clubs. I would love to organize getting out to the high schools and doing little presentations about our organization, our committee, sorry, to either recruit more youth or to do outreach and hear their voices on what they need in the community and how we can support them with law enforcement. And the other thing I thought about with youth was reaching out to the houseless youth by going downtown and putting together a pizza party at one of the houseless educational organizations, which is either PAIR, New Avenues for Youth, or Outside In. And I would love to organize something like that. I'm working again with high school youth also going into the colleges where we could go into, I have a list of colleges that have like different clubs and leadership organizations that we can go into and meet with them at their schools. And so in regards to youth, going to high schools and colleges at their own leadership clubs in their school site, talk about what we do, hear their voices, and maybe bring pizza and drinks. The other thing I thought about, and I'll try to wrap this up, was meeting the African American community where they're at by going into their churches or their fellowship halls and having roundtable discussions and really hearing their voices around law enforcement and what they need and hope for in the policing community. I have a list of all these items, and Dory, I see your hands up. Do you want me to, I could go on and on.
It's up to you. I just have a question whenever you're done.
Oh, okay. So I was thinking of doing even a like pizza party for as many youth as we could, and putting together a pizza party at like Grand Bowl Central or Grand Central, the bowling alley. Grand Central Bowl, that's what it's called. I have so many different ideas for high school youth and college youth that I feel like I could organize and get people to help me. And I also want to reach out to the houseless community and the sex worker community, working with small agencies, just to hear their voices come together, going to sites I'm connected with to hear their voices and see how they can get involved with us. And as we're out there in the community, start recruiting these people to come into our space also to be members of PCCEP, but also to go into their environment so they feel safe to talk about these things. Other thoughts I've had was working with the refugees and immigrant population and sharing information about knowing their rights when they come into contact with law enforcement, and hear their voices and how we can help the refugee and immigrant population. Other thoughts that I've had, and I'm summarizing, is going to different fairs and have tables at different Portland fairs like Juneteenth and public safety fairs and events that happen throughout the summers, and any events that we can get out there and table where we can share our information, hear more voices, and get more involvement with the community. I am again summarizing about 20 different things that I've written out, and I'm not sure how to get that out into a public meeting. So I'll take a break right now so Dory can ask her question, and maybe I can write some things in the chat and answer questions. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tia. I think that's an incredible like menu of options in terms of outreach and different types of events. And like, I think it's incredible to have all of those ideas available to us. And I think there are lots that we could totally turn into a reality and have some really cool events. My question about the events for both Tia and I think this whole subcommittee is, in your mind, do each of these events, or when you think about them, is there like a subject, or I guess more generally, what is the goal of any given event? Or you know, they could all have different goals, obviously, but how do you think about that?
I did think about that. Sorry, I'm going to in my notes I was writing, I did make a list of topics, and I think the topics would vary depending on the community that we're in, but definitely having like starting questions and but just I think I was thinking more general and broad as far as coming out to them to hear their voices around just the local community and what the concerns that they have in the community around policing and public safety. But there's so many, like Pastor Rodman mentioned, there's so many hot topics right now around houselessness, gun violence, drug use. And I know something that I'm volunteer with is a group of houseless people who are a lot of sex workers. And there was just a big sex work sting by the Portland Police Bureau. And I've heard a lot of stories from people who have been arrested, and just hearing stories with the people I work with, I think we can start with some of the action items that have just actually happened in the community to see how they're doing and what they need to feel safe. And I think we would have topics available, but I think just I'm not sure.
Yeah, I have some thoughts on that too, Tia, of like, I think part of us going out into the community is, one, just sort of engaging, being more accessible, like in a different way. And then, like the topics or the theme we've always had is like meeting the community where they are. So captivating the people, the network that they have by going out to them and just, I think it might be kind of hard to have like a topic focused meeting if we're doing that, but maybe not. Maybe I was thinking about, Tia, how you were saying, like, the fair, and then having kind of like, having this time to talk about issues. I think depending on how we set up events will determine what kind of conversation we have. In my professional paid job, I put on events, and I put on community events, and if we're gonna have a fair, right, we're gonna have like individual tables, and people are just gonna kind of walk around and get their own information. But if we had like a presentation or a panel, then we could maybe, like we've had in the past, and then sort of open it up to maybe like community conversations or breakout groups. So I think maybe thinking about like what structure, and maybe, and also I also want to point out like us just being realistic of our capacity, and how we would love to be at every out in the field out in the city every meeting, but that probably isn't realistic. So I just wanted to throw out there something I wanted to kind of share in this group today, is like, maybe for right now we commit to making it out in the community event every quarter. And if it's more, great. And as if we get ramped up and we kind of figure out our flow of like what kind of meeting we want to have, either a fair, something more elaborate, or just go into someone's organization headquarters to even host a meeting perhaps, and have them highlighted, right? Have them in the community corner and highlight their space. And then if there's a topic, but yeah, just committing to once a quarter. So maybe like for right now, like something between September and December, we really think about what we could do. And maybe that's going out to, maybe the easiest thing is going out to an organization and hosting a meeting in their location could be a way to jumpstart this plan. Yeah.
That's a good point. That's realistic. I know I want to do so many things, and it's going to be.
We build our muscle memory around, like, we're building our muscle, like, how do we do this? I mean, once we kind of figure out, maybe have a couple under our belts, we could get more ambitious.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we've all kind of talked a lot about the why. Now we seem to be talking about the how. And my question is more like the what. But I'd also like to hear from Teresa about this. So let's go to Teresa.
Thank you. First of all, I love a lot of these ideas. I think a lot of them are doable, and a lot of them are a little bit, like, I think, Ashley, I agree with you. Let's think about it from down the line. A big factor in making decisions around what activities, events you want to hold is the planning it takes to create them and make them happen. So we can come up with a bunch of ideas and they can sit on a shelf for a long time, right? But I think what might be helpful for this group is to decide, and actually you're on point. How many events or activities do you want to do before the end of this year? And then decide what those activities are and spread them, spread them within the months that exist so you have time to plan and organize. You obviously don't want to do them like, last minute anything, because you need to give yourselves time to promote it. You need to give yourselves time to organize it, identify a partner or partners to help you. And there's a lot of logistics behind the scenes stuff that people don't realize it takes to do and to achieve. And then also, if you want to be more accessible, right? You have to think about, do we provide childcare? Do we provide food? Do we provide interpreting as well? Maybe we have the top 2 ASL and Spanish, but maybe you're going into a community that has, Asian languages. And so you want to make sure that you are talking to that community and being respectful of, the dominant languages in those areas. So these are the things to think about. And then I would say for 2024, it's good to start thinking about what you want to achieve in 2024 and how many events you want to have. And I think a good goal to have is, maybe 3 or 4 events that allow you to plan and make it happen, learn from that, and then plan for the next event and activity and learn from that and keep going. At some point, things don't necessarily get easier, but you become more organized. And so those tools and skills that you develop as a team become easier to facilitate. I think it's a matter of you all deciding what is most important for this group to achieve this year. Is it 1 event or 2 events? Is it partnering with a organization, or is it something you want to do on your own? Obviously, if you want to have like a fair, there's tons of people you're going to have to reach out to, and that's very time consuming. And then also you have to also consider who's going to take the lead on which project, right? Is it going to be you, Ashley, who's going to take the lead on the very first activity? And is it Tia, you're going to take the lead on the second activity? Obviously, knowing that the whole committee is there to help you, but you're going to be the one delegating and ensuring that you're not burning yourself out because you're doing all the details or thinking about everything. And then what role does PCCEP do? Or Dory, what's her role? And obviously there's a lot of things and resources that she has, so you don't reinvent the wheel, but ensuring that she's part of the planning and that she can tell you what she can help you with, so she can do it, or she can have somebody on her team do it. But it is really important that on top of having all these ideas, identifying how many for this year, and then decide when you start planning. And that's the first step. If it's something you want to do in, let's say, November, I would say planning starts now, right? If you want to have something in December, well, is it realistic to do 2 events? Maybe you do 1. So this is why it's really important to think about what it is that you want to do first. Do you want to do 1 activity? And then what's that activity? And then start planning towards that activity.
Yes. Thank you so much, Teresa. I think, like I said earlier, I feel like we've been sitting around talking about the why and what, and now it's like, let's do the action. So I think that does require, a little bit more work than maybe we're I'm just gonna say talk to myself what I've been putting in terms of those logistics. So this is a really good conversation for me because I am a doer. I can do that stuff. I just getting like, yeah, that consideration of like what we want to do. And so I think it's really important if we can walk away with a little bit more of that intent tonight. So Pastor Weisner, you got your hand up there.
Yes, I was just gonna go to the question of of the what topic. If they're moving into the areas like organizations such as the NAACP, AMA, and others, and that great topics I think that we have done so well here at PCCEP is in directives and areas of what those topics look like, educating of knowing your rights, how to engage, what to engage, and where to go to engage in with law enforcement and that system that they work through in the public. That's my direction as has shown the success of our information to communities and organizations who are working separately, but partnering also in the areas of what we do if we come and partner with them. It makes it much stronger. Thank you.
And Celeste?
Okay, took me a minute to unmute. There we go. So, Pastor Wisner touched on something that I have been talking with Dory about, and then that I had planned to do with the Racial Equity Subcommittee before we ran out of members and did the hiatus, and that is to actually do during the summer. She and I talked about this. Summer's come and gone, but the need is still there. Is not only engage very directly with the community about specifics, but to tie them to actions that need to come out of our that actually do come out of the strategic agreement. And for one of the big issues that you will see has come up is the issue of consent to search. And so I wanted to have a workshop where we invite a community partner that does this type of advocacy to actually do the presentation, for us to review the material with them, do the presentation, and put it on in various sections of the city where they have had high issues with complaints against harassment, or that they don't know what the process is for working with the police when they're stopped, whether a driver or a pedestrian, knowing what techniques the police use to request consent, you know. And so basically to have these public events be tied to very specific things, like do an outreach to talk about what are your rights, do an outreach to talk about what is consent for search, do an outreach that shows you how to file a complaint with the police, you know, do an outreach for neighborhood associations to help them do community meetings with the police. And you know, because we could spread ourselves out there, but to what point? What exactly are we trying to accomplish? What is the call to action? What is the task we're trying to accomplish? And so I would have us go back to the settlement agreement and to our paragraphs and look at that and then tease these things out, because we can meet ad infinitum with community members, but to just say, hi, we're here, this is what we do, that does not exactly accomplish what I know a lot of you are here to do, which is make change. We might tell everybody we're here, and then we use up our budget telling people we're here, because we have a budget for these, and you got to be mindful of how many we actually have the financial capacity to do, as well as, like Teresa said, what do you have the organizational and staffing capacity to do? So I really applaud the great energy and the work that's been done, but I think you have enough now to actually start looking at, we made all these contacts, now what are we going to say to them, and what are we going to do for them, or what are they going to do for us when we pull this in. And then also be mindful of something that I try to do with Dory and Pastor. When we set agendas, not to pack that agenda, allow flexibility for some emerging issue. There's always going to be some conflict or issue or misstep or controversy or whatever that we're going to need to respond to. So keep yourself flexible and not pack that schedule full. That's it for me.
Yeah, totally. It's less in terms of like not, just being mindful of how we're scheduling what we can and can't do. We really need to drive that home with ourselves because we want to do it all. Byron.
Thanks, Leslie. I was this is community outreach, and Tia, this is for Lionel Irving. I seen on the news that he didn't get funding in some sort of way to help with his community outreach with gang members, reentry programs. Is there any type of way of helping this man out? I'm pretty sure I heard Celeste, she brought up something good that I was trying to think of how to use. Was this might sprinkle somewhere in, if we look into the settlement agreement, I might see something, or we might see something where this is something that's positive in the BIPOC community. And I wanted to see if we might bring him to the table. I'm gonna try to get in touch with him to see if he can come to a meeting and hopefully speak to us, and maybe we can get him entwined. And also with the events that everybody we're talking about right now, and how do we do them? Certain events can be culturally specific. So when we have those events, everything that we put out, we know it will be culturally specific, Asian, Russian, Vietnamese, etc. So when you set up those events, always know everything will be culturally specific. So at least you'll have that part of it down, and you'll have that part of the situation out of the way. And then for the brain injury, I want to say we can use the same room for the room that we have for the meeting with the mayor. We don't need a lot of people, I'm presuming. I mean, 1 or 2 people from each department. I want to say JDH for Juvenile Detention Department, the Department of Community Justice. Somebody put in the chat. PPB, the Urban League. 1 or 2 people from those. And the core of the subject is brain injury and how it affects us every day in policing, recognizing situations. And I'm just throwing things out there. Hopefully I can spring more ideas off of what I'm saying. So the core of the subject will be about brain injury and how that relates to people who have them and different stages of them, PTSD, car accidents, getting shot in the head, things of those natures, and how does that correlate into the police and how they think and how they handle, and what type of answers or what kind of problem solving can they help us go into the right direction? If I'm making sense, does that sound right? I don't know if that kind of makes sense.
I understand
Yes.
your thought, Byron. I think you're
Makes
proposing
perfect
having,
sense.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
then.
kind of a
Okay.
summit around how brain injuries show up, in policing and the criminal justice system, and bringing together all of those stakeholders. I think it's a really cool idea. Yeah, I think it's a really cool idea, and I think the members of the subcommittee will take note of it. And yeah, I think the next steps here are to kind of do that work of like putting the pieces on the calendar and like seeing what works, right? Like, because any one of these would be a good month or more of coordination, planning, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it does feel a little overwhelming, to think about putting on a summit. And I think I just want to make sure that we're connecting that like going out to organizations to say who we are. I think, that could be maybe seen as like a waste of time in some parts of those connections. But at the same time, I think it's part of our relationship building that we've been committing to and reaching out to, and sort of like, even just going out into their space and to maybe to co-host a meeting. So I just, want to walk away with a couple direct to-dos, so that T and I can, start to think about kind of a year out plan, maybe a year and a half, maybe even just finish out this year, think about 2024, that maybe a brain injury summit with connections to our guest speakers, and all that topic today, but thinking about it for next spring, because I just so that we can get some muscle memory around our engagement in like a smaller dose. So maybe next steps for this year, to December, is asking to co-host with another organization. It sounds like we've got some really strong connections. I don't know if in AACP is maybe a first good route, because that could, I know there's a conversation about how we're connecting to the African American Black community in our city, who we know are most impacted by policing in our city specifically too. And so thinking that could be like one step. And then another one is maybe T and I can start engaging with school those school leadership committees, to start doing some outreach and seeing who'd want to bring us in. And that could be just a smaller cohort of us going out maybe. And then, I think it's just like planting the seeds, like getting out there and then co-collaborating on like bigger things. So I'll stop there. I just wanted to make sure, we do sort of not walk away with a game plan, but that maybe T and I can gather this info and make a game plan.
Hey, Ashley.
Yes.
I was going to ask a question to Celeste that might also be areas into the topic of what we're talking about tonight. Is the African American Health Coalition still alive, Celeste, that you know of? But I think that would be a great areas also in some of this, if we're looking at certain topics about brains, the injury. But I just don't know if they're still, and who is leading that.
As far as I know, they are defunct, but again, I would ask the question, when we are putting these together, how does this tie into the work we're doing? Because there are groups that are already presenting on brain injury. So when you say brain injury, do you mean people with brain injuries and their encounters with the police specifically? Or are you just talking about sharing the ideas about brain injuries? Because those are two different things. And one of them is not central to our mission.
That would answer my question in the areas of being directly with topic. But again, a partnership would be that if African American Health Coalition is still alive, might be another area to see some of the studies or work that they may have.
Okay, as far as I know, like I said, they're defunct, but we can also look at other groups that are formed in their absence.
Well, I just want to interject here. We have a few minutes left, and we have Fern who has a comment also, or a suggestion. But I think honestly you have a lot of great ideas. What Ashley and the rest of the committee probably need to do is work behind the scenes and do some more strategic planning. And I shared with Dory that I'm happy to work. I know Frida and I are happy to work with you all to get a little bit more structure to your plans. And yeah, we're here to do that. So I just wanted to mention that. And then Fern, you have a question or a comment, and then we're gonna close this part and then open it up for open public comment so we can close out the meeting. Go ahead, Fern.
Okay, listening to you and talking about the summit and that sort of thing, I know that we would enjoy working with you all very, very much on this, because it's a part of our mission as well. And then find the experts, as I was talking with Dr. K. Renee earlier today. So however you guys form it, we'd love to participate. And there's other, like I said, there's Siebert and there's other organizations that we can tap into, and then tapping into the communities that live in Portland is a marvelous idea.
Thank you, Fern. Those are great suggestions. Looks like Barbara has a comment or two also.
Yes, thank you. I found this extremely interesting and surprising. I didn't realize the extent of brain injuries and how many people in jail and who are stopped by the police have brain injuries. So, Cop Watch is always interested in, data collection and everything. So I hope that there's some way to have that happen more, because I'm just imagining, what if I've heard that in Texas, there's this great brain injury place. What if we were doing that instead of jailing people? Like the money spent on jails and policing could be, of course, spent on that instead. So that would be ideal. So
thanks, Barbara. Anybody else have a comment or a question? We'll open it up to the public. Anybody have anything else to add to the discussions that we've had throughout the day? Really powerful and engaging conversations.
I would like to say, Tia or Ashley, Dory, I would love to help organizing this. So if you need to get in touch with me, you can please do.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Byron. I think I'd like to sort of, commit to, as a co-chair, as a member of the committee, to maybe think of some like a work plan in terms of roles and responsibilities kind of structure. And then Celeste, definitely want to chat with you more about that, how are we connecting what we're doing at the community to, what our job is in the settlement. I think I just want to tap in more into that, and then make sure that we, maybe that could help us develop like our messaging, that we're on our outreach. So, just I'm making a commitment to the committee to do that outreach with everybody, and maybe think of like, follow-up conversations about like where you want to plug in. So I'll take the lead on that to get the convo started. Because then, Tia's been doing some really great work in terms of like connecting to organizations. And so I think it's just like us organizing as a group of like who's going to do what. And I do that in my professional job. I nag people to get their job done. So I think I can handle a little bit. Dory.
Awesome.
Since there's no one else in line, I wanted to kind of expand on what I heard Celeste saying. I think Celeste was saying, or at least my interpretation is that it's never a waste of time for PCCEP to get out there and tell people about what we do. If that's the only thing we did, that would be a waste, right? Because we do exist to offer a platform for people to give specific input about policing in Portland, and also for the city and police to share information with community. That is our charge, right? So if that was the only thing we did, that would be a problem. But we also have to do that to be functional and effective. So I think that's where, going in the direction of trying to pin down, like, what are 4 to 5 things we see ourselves doing over the next year, event-wise, that we can kind of pencil in. I think there seems to be interest in this brain injury forum of some sort. We can maybe pencil that in. There's something going on with the stops data. We can pencil that in somewhere. So some of these more topic-based things that fit in, and then the outreach stuff, that's going to continue for sure. The more general outreach. That's kind of was my interpretation of that. And I know this could feel like a lot, and staff is here to help you with everything. We are absolutely here. We are going to be doing all of this alongside you. So I think this conversation feels like a lot, but it's going to be good. It's going to, I think, make things easier.
Thanks, Dory. Barb, I see you in the chat. Did you have a specific comment or question? Barb Rainish. Okay, so she's says no thank you in the chat. We'll definitely try to leave a little bit more space for public comment in the future. We just had such a
Well, can I ask a question, Teresa? Because it'll help folks. When we have a meeting that is gathered public input, what public input are we missing? Because this whole meeting has been about gathering public input and comment. So I'm a little confused as to what we didn't do.
For those not reading the chat or watching this recording later, Barbara Nish in the chat has said, again, no time for public comment honored before meeting close. I think that's what Celeste is responding to.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand what type of public comment are you referring to? Because this whole meeting has been about public comment. So are you talking about public comment on something? Are you talking about public comment about something that is not on the agenda?
I'm talking about the open public comment that is on the agenda at the end of the meeting. And one suggestion I have might be to ask around 7:30 if there are people that have public comment, so you get an idea of if anybody has something they've brought to say at the end of the meeting, because I'm tired. You know, I don't think that this stuff should be said after 8 o'clock when everybody's ready to leave. I think you need to set aside time if you're going to offer that. That's all, Celeste. I appreciate that public comment was included throughout the meeting.
I'm a little lost. Are we pointing
and I'm
to
public commented out. I've been saying this since the beginning of this iteration of PCCEP, and sometimes it goes well and sometimes it doesn't.
Well, is there something I'm missing, Barb? Because the question I hear is, it was public comment all through the meeting. And are you looking at a specific place you want to see public comment, or I'm a little lost? Could you explain a little
or
more?
a topic, because we were asking you specifically, was there something outside of the agenda that you felt you should have had time to speak to?
Anything I chose to bring here, yes, or anything anybody else chose to bring here. So if you guys are going to put open public comment on your agenda, then I think you should really save time and space for that to happen, rather than it being the last 5 minutes of the meeting or even after the meeting has ended.
Okay.
That's all. I appreciate that it's being included throughout the meeting.
On top.
But one of the things I would have brought up is something that I brought up in the chat earlier about if PCCEP is going to follow up at all with Portland Street response. That's one example of something that I would have liked to bring to general public comment, for example.
Okay, we'll probably follow up on that more at the full committee meeting, since that's something that the full committee would address. But thank you for bringing that up.
Yep. Thank you, Barb.
Thanks for listening, y'all.
Thank you. Yeah, when we have meetings that are generally open to the public, we do have a shorter public comment window. But when we do start that late, we are more than happy to go a little later to honor that full window of time. So thank you all for bearing with us and being flexible for these public meetings that we have. Okay, so with that, we are ready to wrap up, and we're just looking ahead at our next meeting, which is next Wednesday. It's a full committee meeting from 6 to 8:30 p.m. And yeah, with that, thank you everyone for all of your contributions tonight. It was really interesting, and I think we made some great progress. Thank you again for our guests for being here from Brain Injury Connections. You really, really enriched this meeting. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, Dory. Thanks, Teresa.